بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حق الأشياء كما هي، ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها، وانصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في غزة وفي مشارق ومغاربها. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربنا وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامنا والطف بنا وبهم يا رب العالمين. وصلى وسلم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أزواجه وذريته برحمتك يا رب. Okay. Okay, so we are starting from here today. This physics, finding it necessary to criticize its own foundations. Firstly, so far Allama Iqbal hasn't provided any evidence that physics is criticizing its own foundations. That's a criticism of empiricism. Some of the philosophers, and empiricism is one of the justifications of physics. It's not the foundation of physics. There are many other justifications. So, but we can understand his purpose or his intention by this. So physics finding necessary to criticize its own foundation has eventually found reason to break its own idol. And the empirical attitudes. So for Allama Iqbal, Locke's empiricism, for example, is not empiricism at all. It is against empirical attitude. So empirical attitude which appeared to necessitate scientific materialism, has finally ended it in a revolt against matter. So scientific materialism, by scientific materialism, he means in this context, what does he mean? So, what by scientific materialism he means is a notion of material substance, I guess, as something imperceptible, existing in a absolute space. A space is absolute if it doesn't depend on things existing within it for its existence. So that's a Newtonian space. And I think it's wrong to claim that physics has rejected absolute space. I mean, there are some physicists who have rejected it, but some other physicists haven't rejected it. So I think for physical theorization, it's not that important. So this substance material substance existing in absolute space causing our sensation. So this is empiricism, British empiricism, or even not British empiricism. It is actually one version of British empiricism, which British empiricists themselves critiqued. First, Berkeley, and in fact, the revolt Allama Iqbal is describing here is, in fact, Berkeley's revolt, revolt against matter. Anyway, so by scientific materialism, that's what he means, really, not anything grand. And that scientific materialism for him is against the empirical attitude, because as empiricists, we shouldn't believe in something which is imperceptible, I guess. And that's what Berkeley said, actually. So that's physics finding it necessary to criticize its own foundations. So as I said, it's not foundations, it's just one of the justification. And I don't know whether physics itself, I'm sure some physicists criticized it, but that's not what physicists normally do. Has eventually found reason to break its own idol, and the empirical attitude which appeared to necessitate scientific materialism has finally ended in a revolt against matter. But a revolt against matter is not really a revolt against matter, even if we consider Berkeley. It's a revolt against one conception of, or one, and I don't think it's even a revolt, because not everyone rejected Lockean and Newtonian version of matter, for example. And I'm not even sure whether Newton was a full-fledged Lockean, for example. Since objects then are not subjective state caused by something imperceptible called matter, they are genuine phenomena. So that's what he takes. So once we have rejected the notion of object as something subjective caused by imperceptible matter, if we reject that, then we can understand object as a genuine phenomena which constitute the very substance of nature, and which we know as they are in nature. So from here, although the version of revolt he presents here is a Berkeleyan version, what he accepts in wake of it is primarily a Hegelian version, in a sense. So what he's saying is, so the version which Allama Iqbal thinks that physics is rejecting, the Lockean version, let's say, is of imperceptible object. You can just call it Lockean substance. And according to Locke, this causes subjective images, which he calls impressions or ideas. They are subjective in the sense that they are in the subject, but they are not subjective in the sense that they are chimera of subject's imagination. So for Allama Iqbal, since we have rejected this notion of imperceptible, imperceptible object. Now we can treat object as really empirical thing, and that would be genuine phenomena. So this is Iqbal's neo-Hegelian phenomenology or empirical phenomenology. So this is so when I looked at a chair, I'm not seeing primary qualities and secondary qualities, um, and then constructing a chair in my mind, but what I'm actually seeing is the chair. And this chair as a phenomena, and this chair can constitute real chair, and we know it as they are in nature, not as something abstract which doesn't resemble our actual experience, and which is supported by something to which we don't have access. So this is a new empiricism. So important thing here is that as against Lockean empiricism, what we know is thing in itself. So that's Hegel. So not even Kant. That's even beyond Kant. But the actual empiricism, after rejecting Locke, for example, Berkeley rejects matter. That's if there is a revolt against matter, that's Berkeley. But Berkeley doesn't put a new phenomena for Berkeley are ideas in my mind. So there's no matter really, it's a mind. And nature is in itself an idea for Berkeley. And obviously Hume came, and Hume actually also dismantled the idol of mind. So after Hume, mind is itself is a bundle of ideas, a bundle of impressions, and the matter is also a bundle of impressions. So there are only impressions and ideas, there is nothing else. But Allama Iqbal doesn't go that way. He goes to Hegel phenomenology, where so we don't see. So he goes to phenomenology as we experience the world. So we see chair as in our experience, and that chair we see it as it is. And new physics, according to him, is based on this phenomenology. But obviously that has nothing to do with new physics. Old physics wasn't based on empiricism, British empiricism, and new physics is not based on phenomenology. Physics works at a different level, and it has different purposes and pedigree than Allama Iqbal seems it has. But why Allama Iqbal is so interested in rejecting and so thrilled by this revolt against matter? Because this conception of independent, imperceptible matter for him leads to a physics which doesn't leave any room for freedom and morality and religion, for example. And so the people in 19th century also thought that physics had dismantled religion and morality because it doesn't leave any room for um, freedom and morality because it's based on cause and effect and independent matter, etc., which is also unknowable, but that's something secondary, I think. But we'll continue this, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu. Salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi ajma'in bi rahmatika.